Welcome to the latest episode of the Inspiring International Potential podcast. Created by GC International Trade, this podcast aims to fire up businesses in the northwest of England to explore their international growth potential. My name is John Quinton-Barber and I'm host of today's episode. Today we're talking about international trade in the healthcare sector with international trade advisor Gillian Barlow, Gary Baylis from Registrar Corp and Michael Gould from Richardsons Healthcare. But before we start, I'd like to signpost you to the GC International website where you'll find information about up-and-coming masterclasses. Go to international.growthco.uk/events. So, without further ado, I want to say hello to my guests, Gillian, Gary and Michael. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, John.
Good morning. Gillian, you've got, can I just say, International Trade Advisor. You've got an aspirational job title. What is an International Trade Advisor? How long have you been doing it? And what does your role entail?
So as an International Trade Advisor, our role is to work with local Northwest companies who are interested in selling their products or services overseas. We work with companies from all sectors and of all sizes. Really it's whether they're new to exporting, we can help them take their first steps, or more experienced, we can help them to look at new markets or maybe launching new products.
Give me a bit of a snippet of your day in your life, who you work with and what kind of challenges you face.
So I work with companies across the healthcare sector, which is a very broad sector itself. And it might be working with a company who's new to exporting but is already doing well in the UK and selling into the NHS already. So we might do an in-depth diagnostic with them to help them look at their export strategy and develop an action plan for them. Or we might be looking at which particular countries would be a good target market for them. Or it might be that we're looking at doing some more in-depth research with my overseas colleagues who can help them to identify potential agents or distributors or do some research on regulatory controls. For more experienced exporters, we might get queries relating to particular shipments or a particular regulatory situation in a particular country. So it's very varied, really, the work that we do.
And for those that don't know, is there a cost to this for the company or is this funded?
All of our support is fully funded. Some of the services provided by our overseas teams are chargeable, and we would do that on a case-by-case basis. But all of the support from the UK is fully funded. Yeah, and we do have funding from time to time as well for companies to participate in overseas trade missions. We've recently supported companies to participate in a virtual trade mission to Omnia Health, which we were able to support them with the $500 registration fee. And we have funding for other activities throughout the year as well.
Thank you, Gillian. And this morning we're here to talk about fascinating healthcare sector, international. I think obviously with COVID, in the context of COVID, that is something that's going to be even more fascinating or challenging, I imagine. Can you tell us, is there anything new in the healthcare sector in international markets?
I think in healthcare there's always new innovations coming along, which is what is needed in this area, because it's an ever growing area as more and more people develop chronic conditions. More and more solutions are needed to help companies with this. So it's an ever-changing marketplace, and there's always opportunities for companies with good products that are, I would say, for the international side, really, as a UK company, you need to already be selling into the NHS and well established in your home market as well.
And any country that springs to mind that, not necessarily priorities, but are good opportunities? Any of the countries that you're working in with?
I would say the US represents a great opportunity for companies. They, like many developed countries, have huge figures of individuals with chronic diseases such as heart disease, stroke, diabetes and cancer, and they need to find more cost-effective ways and more effective solutions to deal with these.
Yeah, because I think we all know that the US has a huge aging population. Does that play a part in the opportunity? I think 6 in 10 Americans are living with at least one chronic disease. So yes. Is that a particular area? So if I'm a company developing a healthcare product or have a healthcare product, would you suggest that that's one of the areas that you would, you'd want to focus on, or would the opportunity would be greatest in that area?
It would depend on the company. I would say the US market is for more experienced companies like Michael from Richardsons Healthcare. I wouldn't suggest it as a first market for a company who's completely new to exporting, because it's such a competitive marketplace. Obviously, the US market has its own medical device companies and some of the best in the world, and it's got its own clusters that are set up in different areas of the US. So no, I wouldn't discuss it as an initial target market, but certainly for more experienced companies, yes, it's a good opportunity, but it takes a long time to. It's a long haul. It's not going to happen overnight.
And that's a great opportunity to bring Michael in. So Michael from Richardsons Healthcare, just talk us a little bit about your company. Tell us what you do and your experience of the US market and any tips you can give.
Okay, so first of all, I should point out we're a small company. We're not a large company. We have only 20 employees. So we're not some large, huge, massive conglomerate. We're a little company, but we love exporting. And I simply don't understand companies that do have an opportunity to export that don't. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, you wouldn't, for example, only rely upon one customer in the UK. Well, I hope you wouldn't. So why do you only rely upon one market, the UK? So I'm very passionate about exporting because I think it offers huge opportunity to companies and the British economy. The US market is more difficult to get into. There's no question about that. It's more expensive. It's further away than, for example, the EU market. And but it's also the largest market in the world. It's at least as big as the EU market combined. In healthcare terms, it's absolutely enormous. And that obviously offers great opportunity. I'm not so sure about, to agree with Jill, that it's that sophisticated in that they make all the most wonderful products themselves, because they don't. They import huge amounts of medical products from the EU and the UK. So there is great opportunity there. But there is no doubt, Jill is right, it's not the first market I would attempt to get into. We entered the US market actually via the EU. A German company that we were dealing with got bought out by a US company, and hence our products went to the US via the German company. And I should point out that my company, we manufacture specialist mattresses for operating theatres. We don't supply the market direct. We don't supply hospitals. We supply the manufacturers of operating tables. So we're effectively a subcontractor. But we decided to have a go at entering into the US market direct ourselves a couple of years ago, and we've had some success in doing that.
Just on that, for anyone who's listening, Michael, what you say you've had some success, and what I'm hearing is, obviously we'd all like more success. What have you done? So how did you go about from that early initial trying to penetrate into the US market, obviously via the EU? What did you do, and kind of what support did you access to help you get to that?
Well, I've always believed that the easiest way to enter any market is to go to trade shows. It's by far the cheapest way of understanding a market. And let's face it, you've got all your potential customers at the trade show. Just as importantly, you've got all your competitors or potential competitors at the trade show, so you know precisely what's being supplied to that market. For a relatively cheap amount of money, it is not expensive going to trade shows. You deem so much information that it's crazy not to take that opportunity up. And Americans love trade shows. They center their marketing around their trade shows. So there's plenty of them. It's just choose the right one.
And so if you've had some great success with the trade shows. Just very briefly, is that just attending as a delegate, or is that exhibiting?
Well, you've got to have some guts here. You've got to be prepared to walk onto a stand and say, hello, my name's Michael Gould. I'm the managing director of Richardsons Healthcare, and I'm here to flog you operating table mattresses. So you've got to be able to do that. And some people obviously are not able to do that. Fortunately, I still am just about.
Gillian, I'm going to come to you now just to pick up a point about the trade shows and the support for people who are thinking and just want to act on Michael's advice there. Is there any support for anybody who wants to, for instance, attend a trade show? Is there a delegation that goes out from Manchester? Talk us through what opportunities there are.
Well, there's a number of routes to trade shows. The Department of International Trade runs the Trade Show Access Programme, which offers funding to companies who are looking to exhibit at overseas trade shows. And that takes the form of grants of between £500 to £2,500. And there's a list of selected shows that we support each year. Obviously, there are lots of different trade shows in the US, so I would recommend that you do your research to find out which is the best one for you. In terms of the ones that we support at the moment, we're looking at supporting the Florida International Medical Expo, which was meant to take place in summer, but unfortunately, because of the current situation, the physical event isn't taking place now. And it's going to be an online event taking place in September. And we're looking at supporting companies in a similar way that we did for the Omnia Health Live, which was last month. So it would be a virtual platform. The big takeaway from that is that if you're going to any of these virtual missions or events, then do your homework first. You've got to put a lot of time into pre-arranging meetings, looking through the delegates, looking through the attendees, and seeing who you think is going to be a good fit for you.
And if anyone wants to get to access that Florida online show, is that to go to international.growth.co.uk for more information?
Yeah.
So, Gillian, can you tell us what is the latest trend in international growth in the healthcare sector? And how can companies take advantage of that?
Well, obviously, as a result of COVID, there's been huge opportunities for companies in the diagnostic sector. So anyone with solutions related to that particular area. There's also huge opportunities in personal protection equipment. And the other thing as well is ventilators and hospital supplies. We've seen companies doing well who feed into intensive care units and those sort of areas as well. So anything related to those sorts of immediate response as well.
Did you see, just talk us through the increase in perhaps inquiries during COVID? Nobody knew 100 days ago where this was heading. Nobody had that crystal ball. We all now have the benefit of hindsight as we're way past 100 days into this. But is there can you talk about anything that was not necessarily unusual, but anything over the last 100 days that you've seen a trend, perhaps?
I think the main one really from my perspective has been the personal protection equipment. Obviously, the supplies for frontline staff have been in high demand, but also we're seeing things like more innovative solutions as well for the speedy cleansing of ambulances and things like that. Hospital wards, opportunities in those sorts of areas as well. Just
if I'm a business wanting to trade internationally, I can only imagine there's going to be quite a lot of red tape and regulatory compliance. So what is your advice there? And then I'm going to bring in Gary from Registrar Corp, who can talk more depth about some of the challenges and processes and some top tips.
I would say definitely in terms of the regulatory aspect in the US, you really need to do your homework. Obviously, you've got the FDA Food and Drug Administration requirements that you need to look at very carefully and work out which classification for your product. But almost before that, you need to look at your reimbursement strategy as well. You need to look at what the payment pathway is for your product. So I would say that's almost as important as the approval itself, working out how you're going to get paid by the insurers and what your payment pathway is.
That's great. So if I'm a company, small company, and I'm looking through all this red tape and the treacle I'm about to tread through to get my product to market, we come to you. We could come to you for that kind of advice, that support.
Absolutely, yeah.
Great. And now this is a great opportunity to bring in Gary Baylis from Registrar Corp. Gary, I've done a little sneaky look at who you are. You have a number of years' experience in regulatory affairs and regulatory processes. So from a small business point of view, you want to trade internationally, just give us an overview about what you do and some of the challenges.
Yeah, sure. My background is actually many years in the international shipping and logistics business. So I come to all of these regulatory requirements able to kind of put myself in the shoes of the exporter. My lifetime has been spent helping people like Gillian get into overseas markets, but from the point of view of physically getting their products into those markets. So I'm very, very aware, before I came into the regulatory side of things over the last few years, very much aware of the challenges that exist in overseas markets. These days, it's so very easy to ship your goods anywhere around the world. It's not expensive even, but the problem is not so much shipping things to markets, it's getting them into markets. And there's been a huge rise around the world, actually, in technical barriers to trade, like regulatory compliance, for a number of reasons, mostly to do with things like safety, security, environmental concerns, and so on. So, and America has led the way, basically, in regulatory compliance requirements, because they're basically responding to their role as protecting the public in the USA.
I think that's absolutely, we're all for that protection and regulation, Gary. But is there, I mean, from a small business point of view, and Michael talked about being a small business there is support for small businesses to get through this journey?
Yes, yeah, and this obviously the first port of call for many companies is DIT and the regional offices, their regional ITAs that they work with. In fact, actually, I think there's a lot to be gained from peer-to-peer networking as well. So industry associations have a big part to play in this. So medical industry associations, they can, to use an American term, leverage their members' experience and knowledge to help new exporters or people entering new markets. But to basically come back to what Gillian was saying, it's a matter of really doing your homework before you go into the market. Again, as Michael was saying, there are ways to get information about new markets, to do your market research, like going to trade shows. When it comes to things like technical barriers to trade, like regulations, similarly, you have to do your homework before you go into the market. You've got to look at both, not just the opportunities in the market, but the challenges. That's the important.
It's a great opportunity to bring you in here. Just give us any first-hand experience on this journey that you've been through yourself on the regulatory journey and any of the challenges and barriers that you face.
Yeah, it's each market is different. As has been mentioned, as everybody knows, the American market has huge potential, huge possibilities. It's a very, very big potential market for people, but it's got its own challenges, and the Americans have led the way in things like regulatory compliance, especially in the healthcare industry. In fact, a lot of people in the healthcare industry will have heard of the FDA because it's very much the elephant in the room. If you're developing a new medical product, people will know that they've got to take account of that. And that's really what's important. If you're developing a new product, before you even get past the design stage and the production and marketing, before you get into that, you have to factor in the regulatory requirements. And I think that's as important with regard to European business as it is in markets like America. So technology is advancing so much these days. it's so very easy to get carried away with the potential of your new innovative product, but you have to look a bit further down the line to know what, for example, what circumstances the product is going to be used within. Because if you take FDA regulations, you may well have a medical device or a pharmaceutical, but you need to know really how it's going to be used and all the characteristics of it to see how that actually lines up with regulatory requirements for the thing. It's no point going all the way down the development and design and production and marketing path, only to discover at the end of that you've got a significant problem, to a challenge, if you like, on the regulatory side that you hadn't foreseen.
Gary, that is fantastic advice. Thank you for that. It's really, really rich and good advice. Michael, the elephant in the room, not you, the FDA. The FDA, what's your experience of this, and from a small business perspective?
There is a problem with the FDA. Well, it's not a problem with the FDA. FDA are doing their job. We get a slightly lighter touch because effectively we're not making our own products. We're a subcontractor making a US company's products for them and on their behalf. So it is a lighter touch. You still have to be FDA registered, which is expensive. Before you've even entered into the market, you've got to pay up, I think it's about £5,000 a year, $5,800, something like that. It goes up every year by about $1,000. And that's just to be allowed to sell your products into the US. It doesn't mean they've been checked out or they've been approved. It simply allows your company, it registers your company to be allowed to sell into the US market. The other thing which can be a little bit daunting is when you start dealing with large corporations and you get a 92-page document confirming that you're not you're not employing people under slave regulations, or that the processes that you are using to manufacture products don't include banned substances from weird bands. I mean, it is a minefield, but you know something, you just work your way through the form. It's not that complicated. Use a bit of common sense and you get through it. And I'm quite sure the DIT are there to hold your hand a little bit. So yes, it is difficult, but you've got to think of the potential of the US market is absolutely enormous. So it's a payoff. It's a payoff.
Absolutely. I think just in 2019 alone, Northwest companies in the sector exported around 350 million to the USA. So for anyone who's listening, and you know, this is, you could have a whole hour about regulatory affairs and regulation because it's such an important topic. The key message is it's there to safeguard, it's there to ensure that you are safeguarded and you are exporting correctly in the right way legally into the market. But it works, you get through it, and when you get through it, Michael, absolutely, the prize is huge. So,
and you know the other big advantage, and it really is a big advantage, it's great fun exporting. I mean, you go into, I've visited some of the most wonderful cities while I've been at trade shows and I met some fabulous people. So it's not just the end result of selling your product and making a profit, it's also about life experience as well. And you know something, for a small company like ours and for an individual like me, that's part of the equation. It's great fun.
Well, why can't we have fun at work? We should be able to have fun at work, shouldn't we? And Gillian, I'm going to come on to you about having, not necessarily fun at work, but you know, you've led trade missions to Boston and to California. You know, you're living this, I would say, day in, day out. This is your role, your day job. You are helping so many companies through this journey of many twists and turns. But as I said there, 350 million export from the Northwest to the USA last year demonstrates that there's a market there, demonstrates there's opportunity. So our message to listeners is, yes, there is, you know, the challenge of getting to that market. But once you're there, amazing work. So yeah, you know, Gillian, you have got first-hand experience of that.
Absolutely. It's great to work with so many different companies doing different things within the sector. But as I said earlier, my key message to companies is really to do your homework, do as much research and planning as possible before you start selling your products or service to the US. Make sure you do both desk research and make sure you get out and visit the market as well. There are opportunities on trade missions like the ones we've taken to Boston and California previously. And there will be more coming up in the future as well, I'm sure, at different trade shows in the sector. We're looking at Florida International Medical Expo. We take groups out to Bio, and there's always more Northern Powerhouse missions coming along as well. But really make sure you do your homework and understand the type of care provider in the US that uses your product and service and learn as much as possible about them before you go out there, so that you get the most benefit from the visit when you're there, so that you're not wasting time talking to the wrong people.
Great, Gillian. We're coming to the last 5 minutes now, which has been a very interesting, informed discussion. So before we go, Michael, if anyone's listening and they want to get started with the international growth in the healthcare sector, what would be your key advice to them?
First of all, I would use organisations like the DIT and your local Chamber of Commerce. The DIT, for example, as previously been mentioned, has programs like the Access program to use for exporting and for going to trade shows. Also previously mentioned by everybody, I think, is do your homework. You've got to understand who your potential customers are and your potential competitors before you go, so you know where to look. And finally, and really importantly, enjoy it. It's so important. Enjoy the journey, because it's often great fun.
Gary, with all your many years experience, rich experience in international trade and regulatory advice, what's your top tips for anyone who wants to get started with international growth in the healthcare sector?
Well, I think, as I'm sure Gillian and Michael will say, you absolutely have to do your market research, but I'd couple with that an intention to do due diligence, if I can put it that way. So many export initiatives are led by the sales department of the company, and it's very easy to get blinded by the potential in markets. You have to have an even-handed approach. You've got to look at both the opportunities and the challenges. I mean, you wouldn't, for example, launch a product in the home market or in the European market without having a balanced look to see what your competition was, what the challenges were, as much as you would to look at the potential. So main thing is to take a balanced look at the market and look at both opportunities and challenges. But whatever you do it in a measured way. The fact is that you've got to have a strategy, and you've got to deal with to look to do that in a measured way. Don't jump into the market. Take your time and prepare. That's extremely important. That holds firm for any international market, but especially with the USA. There's an awful lot to learn. You may have a lot of perceptions about the market. You may have a lot of assumptions. You've got to put those to one side and prove the case. Basically, that's what you've got to do. Otherwise, it's so easy to come unstuck because you come across something that's unforeseen or unexpected.
I love that. Prove the case. If you're listening, to wrap that up, it's about proving the case to ensure that you're not going to fall into any dark pits, and be able to access a fantastic market. Gillian, finally to you. I just want to, Gillian, we are wrapping up this podcast, which has been fantastic and really informative. What top tips have you got? What's your exit tips for anyone who's listening, and how can they access some of the great information and advice and support that you can give?
Yeah, obviously agreeing with the comments made by Michael and Gary about doing your research. Make sure you've got a clear value proposition. How does your product appeal to payers, and how does it address customers' needs? So what does your product do better or more cheaply than what's already out there on the market? Secondly, I would say be realistic about the time it will take and the costs involved in entering the US market. I think from the feedback that we get from overseas colleagues, sometimes UK companies expect to go and visit the market once and get an order straight away, and I think it takes longer than that. It's a long haul, and you need to be realistic about the costs and the type of the type of meetings that you're going to have, and include all your costs in that to make sure that you've got the resources to support your market entry. And thirdly, just coming back to a point that Michael made, do use support that's out there. The Department for International Trade is there specifically to help you with international growth. But don't forget other organisations like the growth platforms, who I know a number of them at the moment have funding available for consultancy projects. So how can you use that to help you with your overseas market entry? Can that help you for consultancy costs towards putting in your regulatory applications? Could you use it for translation? How can you make that funding work for you, really?
Great. Gillian, Michael and Gary, thank you for being brilliant guests and sharing your insights and your advice. And thank you to you for listening to our first episode. If you're interested in finding out more about international growth in the healthcare sector, we have a handy guide on the subject we can send you. Simply email marketing@tradenw.org or visit international.growthco.uk and go to the podcast section on the site to download this episode's PDF. Watch out for our other episodes of this series where we're talking about international SEO, the chemical sector, and exploring opportunities in international markets such as India, the Middle East, and Africa. Thank you for listening.